All right, this is a follow-up on my talk from 5 years ago when I first introduced people to the work of this counterfeiter in England. Uh, all right, it's supposed to be advancing and it's not advancing. There we go, there we go. All right. His current name on eBay is City Ground Hero 6, and he's been active on eBay since May of 2018. I'm going to turn my camera down here, turn the thing down because I'm working on a big monitor. When he first started using this name, he's been using this now for 2 years. It's the longest I've ever seen him use a given name. This is his 19th name on eBay. He listed himself as David Tanner in Leicester. That was starting in May of 18. In September of 18, he started calling himself Erwin Santiago, still in Leicester. But everything that he mails comes from this right here, from S. Alseo in North Park Brook. WA is a Warrington postal code, so he's still in Warrington. He hasn't left Warrington in the 8 or 9 years that I've been following him. He established this name in June of 2017 and held it in reserve until he had to change names because the previous name he'd been using had gotten too many bad raps on eBay. The initial PayPal target was David Tanner, which is the same name he was using up here. But almost immediately, the PayPal target became Samir Al-Sayuti. Now, this fellow here is a Middle Easterner. I don't know if he's an English citizen yet or not. I presume he's from either Lebanon or Syria because he sells a very large number of notes from Lebanon and Syria and lots of other stuff from the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And he's the fellow that we all know as the Warrington Faker. All right, so now I'm going to change over to Windows Photo Viewer because I'm going to be using the zoom feature that Photo Viewer gives me, which you cannot do in that other thing I was using. All right, 5 years ago, this, which looks like a postage stamp but isn't really, it's actually a revenue stamp. On the back of it has text printed on it that says it's worth 2.5 piastres in small change. This is a World War II emergency circulating issue for small note work. It's a 2.5 piastre stamp and became a 2.5 piastre circulating currency. There's also a 5 piastre, which I've never seen. We had both of these listed in Swan Boling, but I had forgotten all about them. I didn't remember that these emergency pieces existed for Syria. Well, when I got the piece and looked at it at 20 power, you see these stair steps down the side here? This is a digital image. That told me immediately that this was not an original stamp from World War II. The stamp was genuine, but the print was inkjet. Everything this guy does is in inkjet. So I figured, all right, he snookered me on this one, but now I've got a counterfeit, that I know about. Now I need to find an original. So a year later, another piece shows up, and it turns out to also be inkjet. 2 years after that, a third piece showed up, and by golly, this was a genuine piece. And the only reason I sprang for this one is because when he changed names the last time, when he became City Ground Hero 6, he began to allow magnification in eBay. Prior to that, he never allowed you to expand any image. He gave you small images and didn't allow you to look at them in large. And so you're really flying pretty blind something small like this. But I was delighted to have this piece. It's well circulated. You can see it's really beat up. I figured, okay, now I don't need to worry about another one of those. Until a year ago, this piece showed up. Well, you can see the printing quality in these other two pieces. They're lithographed, but it's not bad. But look at the print quality in this one over here. Look at this counter down here compared to this counter over here. This is 100% inkjet. He's not using the stamps and putting the inkjet image on the back now. He's printing the whole stamp from whole cloth. Inkjet on the face and inkjet on the back. You can see that the perforations are very even, regular. This hasn't circulated at all. These were actually stuck on cardboard and were double thickness. They glued them onto cardboard and then printed the legend on the back. These ones that he's been turning out off his inkjet printer on the back were regular stamps without being glued onto any other kind of card. So they're regular thickness. This one is a little bit firmer, but look at the size of the image. This guy is dimensionally challenged. He has a hard time making his images come out the size he wants. Even though he does a good job at creating the images, not this particular one here, but the overprints that he makes, he does a good job of separating those overprints from a host note, but then he gets it the wrong size. Well, that's what he's done here. This image is about 2 millimeters too tall compared to the genuine or the original stamps. The perforations are also the wrong age. This is 8.5 perf, and these are about 11.5 perf. So he's got all of that wrong. That's been, I think, 9 or 10 months since this one was offered, and he hasn't offered another one since. He's only offered 4 of these things in 5 years. That's how scarce they are. And now he's down to creating them himself. All right. Changing horses here. This is Behelfszahlungsmittelnote from Germany, the German MPC, that were used in Greece during the war with 2 rubber stamps on the back, one from a German office and one from a Greek office, revalidating these for circulating currency but at low levels during the war. His counterfeit of this has always had this inkjet image on this side that has this gap down here. There's another one, same gap. There's another one, same gap. And a couple, 3 months ago, he started using this one. No gap, new image. So I figured, all right, I better buy one of those and see if he's got himself a real rubber stamp now instead of doing it in inkjet, because this over here has been a real rubber stamp all the while. I don't know where he got this stamp, whether he had it made or whether he found an old stamp. It's the correct stamp for the use. It says Behelfshaber Saloniki Aegis, Salonika and the Aegean. It's the proper stamp for this note. Actually, there were 3 stamps used, but this is one of the proper ones. But it turns out, no, this is still inkjet. He hasn't had a rubber stamp made for that purpose. So here's the blue one. This is the real rubber stamp. You can see the ink leaking out on the paper on the sides, but you have this pretty firm image, you know, through the middle here, the round part. In another part, you don't have so much ink leakage. But the red stamp, this is 100% inkjet with black edges. I'm not sure why so much of his red ink ends up with black edges like that, but you'll see it again. He doesn't seem to be able to get his red ink really red. It's always this maroon color. And you're going to see that over and over again. And we've got a lot of speckles in here. You know, that plus the fuzziness tell you that this is not this is a digital image. It's not from a rubber stamp. It's not from a wood block. It's certainly not lithographed or intaglio. All right, here's a propaganda piece from France. They took a postage stamp with Hitler's head on it, cut the head out, glued it onto the note to make it look like the fisherman is strangling the Führer. This is a very popular propaganda piece. You can make them anytime you want because the stamps are readily available, the notes are available. They bring about $20 when I put them in the YN auction at the ANA summer seminar every year. And he decided he's going to make them by just printing Hitler's head here. Well, that didn't work worth a hoot because you can see everything through the red ink. He didn't make very many of those, and he stopped making them. Everything I'm showing you here is something that's been new in the past 2 years while he's been under this username. At any rate, if you run into one of these that's printed like that you can see everything through it, stay away from it. Now here's an emergency piece from Thailand from right after World War II, and this is legitimately, there was a note that looks like this. I was not aware of it. We don't have this in Swan Boling. When this showed up on his list, I looked in some of my Thai books and found one book that did list it. It's a 50 satang emergency issue on half of a 1 baht note with a finance minister's signature here and a serial number down here, 41355. But all of this black is inkjet. This is what it looks like at 20 power. All these black dots. Then he used the same serial number on another note. This one has black serials. The one I showed you a moment ago had red serials. This is not the same note, but it's got the same fake serial number on it. So he's not even changing this in his software to create this image on the half notes. Then he came up with this one from Netherlands East Indies. Now this one I have not been able to confirm in any reference. It's a 250 gulden piece on a half of a 500 gulden note with a signature and a serial number. But again, it's all inkjet. When you look at this at magnification, this is what you get. And look at these little, see the blue dots here and the pink dots? There's some yellow dots buried in there too, but you can't see them because the yellow blends in too well. And here's some black on top, sitting on top, giving it that dark tone, that dark shade. Co-prosperity sphere, what is it worth? Well, these things are very common. There are lots of different varieties of them. Everybody out there who saw one of these things liked it and said, hey, you know, we can print those on our unit's printing equipment. So you get all different kinds of fonts and all different kinds of printing quality. All the genuine ones are either letterpress or lithographed. This one, of course, is inkjet because this is one of his. So here we've got the rough edges from the inkjet and the black dots. And there's some blue spots and some red spots in here. Here's a letterpress version on a genuine piece, again with some black in it, which I presume is from oxidation over 70 years, that the ink is oxidized. But you see this ink buildup along the edges. This is characteristic of letterpress. This is what you're looking for at 20 power to confirm that something is letterpress. This is lithographed. Some of these organizations in the Philippines were big enough that they had lithographic presses for their unit printing requirements. And some of these co-prosperity notes were in fact lithographed. Here's another piece that he has replicated. These were the Malayan war souvenir pieces that the British planters, when they went back to Malaya after the war, printed to remind themselves of the grim memories, 1941 to 1945. Well, on the genuine pieces, all of this overprint is letterpress. All of this is intaglio. This is a genuine occupation note in the Japanese Invasion Money series from Malaya, but the overprint is all letterpress. But not on this one. This one is all inkjet. Look how fuzzy this is here compared to the block here, or the intaglio down here. We look at it at 20 power. Here's that tail coming down off the G of Grim. But if you look at a genuine note, this is what it looks like. All letterpress. You see the ink build up along the edges here, and the ink build up on the edge right here. This is all characteristic of letterpress overprinting on a genuine piece. Here's another of his products. This one's a specimen. It's also inkjet. And oops, he forgot to put anything on the other side that says specimen. Well, he never shows you the other side of the note. He only shows you one side of almost any lot that he offers. Very rarely does he show two sides of a note. So in this case, you buy it based on this, you get it, and you find out it's only half there. And then when you look at it at 20 power, you discover that it's inkjet as well. There's those black edges again that I was mentioning. Here's what a genuine specimen overprint looks like. Red letterpress. This one is a propaganda message. Here's this maroon ink again. This maroon ink is one of his dead giveaways. He doesn't seem to be able to make his printer print bright red. It always comes out this shade. If you see anything that's that shade as an overprint coming from this seller, assume that it's inkjet. You can assume any overprint is inkjet, but this shade particularly. Now the problem with this propaganda overprint is this character didn't exist in 1944-45. That's one of the abbreviated characters or simplified characters that the Chinese communists introduced when they won the country in 1949. They'd been invented before then, but they hadn't been used before then. So he's using a font that didn't exist when this note was supposed to have been made. This says something like, resist the oppressors and reconstruct the nation, rebuild the nation. This is what it ought to look like. I mean, that's the color you're looking for. This character says, down with the Japanese military clique. And it's a genuine overprint of the period, done by the Chinese to propagandize against the Japanese. Here's another modern version with 8 characters instead of 7, and says approximately the same message, but it's got yet another character in it which did not exist in that period. That's another one of the simplified characters. He's done, half a dozen or 8 of these things, and he finally quit doing them. I think maybe somebody straightened him out. He was a little bit illiterate in Chinese. Here's the New Hebrides overprint on a New Caledonian note. Nouvelle Hebrides, France Libre, free France. Well, see how ugly this thing looks here, how blurry that all is? That's what the genuine one looks like. The genuine one is intaglio. I was amazed when I discovered that was intaglio because the note has no intaglio on it. This is the French polychrome printing technique, and it's all letterpress. Everything on there is letterpress except for the overprint. And the genuine overprint is intaglio. I was really astounded. So here's the ugly overprint that he uses. Here's what the intaglio looks like at 20 power, and it glistens back at you. You can see light reflecting off that ink at 20 power. You never see anything reflecting off of inkjet because inkjet is very fluid and it soaks right into the paper. and it doesn't dry and leave any reflective surface. And again, we've got little black speckles all over the place here. And there'd be some blue and some red. Yeah, there's some blue hung out here on the end of this cross. That's the kind of stuff you find at 20 power. This guy never saw a watermark window that he didn't want to put a rubber stamp on. And he never saw a rubber stamp that he couldn't slap onto some note that has a watermark window. So here we've got a French note, fairly common, dressed up with this rubber stamp, which is from a military school in Western France. Boissy par Marseille, and that's the abbreviation for the department, and I don't remember what department that is. This is not Marseille down on the Riviera. This is Marseille with a different spelling, or Marseille probably. And it's for the School of Weaponry, or the School of War and Military Preparation, La Valiant. That's the name of the school, the Valiant, La Valiant. Okay, remember this rubber stamp. You're going to see it in a minute. Here's a New Caledonian emergency post-World War I circulating script piece. A piece of cardboard with a stamp stuck on it. In this case, it's a 5-franc stamp that's been devalued down to 25 centimes to circulate this small change. And there are some of these for New Caledonia in that period. There doesn't happen to be one of this particular stamp. This is inkjet. The overprint is inkjet. And on the other side, here's our same stamp. This is the same stamp you just saw on that French note, except that it's red with traces of blue still buried in that rubber. He didn't get the stamp completely cleaned off before he started using it for the red. There it is again. Nazi propaganda. This is anti-Semitic. This particular one is anti-Semitic. Some of these things were Nazi party, join the Nazis, join us. Others were strictly anti-Semitic and didn't say anything about the party. This one does want you to join the party under Herr Hitler with the swastika. The Jewish nose here. This is all inkjet. It's on the back of one of the 1923 inflation notes. Now we're going to look at the hand here. This one is a genuine piece. On the inkjet one, you've got all these dots and speckles. You got lines running through here where when this thing came off of his printer, the ink was still wet and it went over a roller. It created these stress marks in the wet ink. The genuine piece was made from some kind of a stamp. Now this would be either a rubber stamp, a linoleum stamp, or a wood block cut. I don't believe it's rubber, because if it were rubber, we wouldn't have these big dropouts. The rubber would have adhered to the paper, would have conformed to the paper a little better. So I think it's a much harder stamped surface, either linoleum or wood, heavily inked, and this is what these things should look like. Now this is the way it was advertised on eBay, and this is the way it was delivered with the swastika. Anything with a swastika on eBay is subject to be removed. Now they don't do a very good job of policing that. I report every Nazi piece 2 times. I report it first as a Nazi piece and second as a replica of an original Nazi piece. Only twice have I ever had one of these things removed from eBay. And then I can't say for sure that it was my report that had it removed, but let's put it this way. I reported it and it didn't make it through to final sale. All the others that you're going to see here, everything with a swastika on it that I have that came off of eBay went right through without any any issues from them. Only twice have they taken one down. You can see that this is the same piece by looking at this offset serial number, offset from the other side, and there's a little bit of damage here. And it's the same note, but when he advertised it, when he showed it on eBay, he showed it this way, and when it arrived in my house, it looked like that. Here's one which is all text. This is also inkjet on top of on the back of one of the 1923 series inflation notes. You can see here we're not pixelating at all on the letterpress printing of this tint, or this main design actually from the back. But look at how blurry and fuzzy all this inkjet is. And we've got little blue speckles up here, a little bit of pink up here. I think there was some pink over here someplace. This is about the Soviet Jew Redux. I don't know who Redux was, but he was a robber baron, a worker murderer, a gross capitalist in Rusland in Russia. This had to have been before the communists, of course. That's also all inkjet. And see how the fluid inkjet ink has soaked through the paper. You can see it on the other side. So even though he never shows you the back side, you can't see this other. Well, actually, with these he does, because he wants to show you what the actual note looks like, and then the overprint as well. Question asking the name of the counterfeiter. Yeah, I showed the name of the counterfeiter, Samir Al-Sayuti. You can go back to that at the end. Go back to that page. All right, so if you see one of these things show up with ink soaked through like that, your antenna should go right up, because the inks that were normally used for printing don't soak through in that fashion. This is the 20 power of the note we're just looking at, which is all text. And somewhere in here you can see there's a yellow dot right there, but I'm not sure that's not in the paper because it's not quite the right shade. You'll see some, there's, blue dots here. All right, let's look at some of these. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, the Benelux countries, at the end of the war, revalidated the local circulating Nazi notes with municipal rubber stamps for emergency circulation until new currency could be made available. I'm going to rotate this so you can see what it says better. Commune de, I gotta look up here at my file title, Ballon-sur-Vesdre, Liège. So this is Ballon-sur-Vesdre around here, Liège down here, that's the county. And look at that LIE, and that's what it is at 20 power, LIE, all inkjet. This one here looks like it's got a better chance of being real rubber stamp because of the differential inking, but it's also all inkjet. Very fuzzy and little colored speckles all through here. This is not uniform ink. This is composed of multiple colors of ink being shot out of 3 different, actually 4, red, blue, and yellow, and black nozzles to create this image on the paper. Here's another piece. 20 power. You get here, you can really see the yellow. The yellow, the red, and the blue all getting away from where they should have been, cluttering up this space between the letters. This note shouldn't exist at all. The British printed 2 shilling sixpence and 5 shilling notes as emergency circulating currency during World War II and never issued them. They printed them uniface. Now, the only thing that's not inkjet on this note is the canceled rubber stamps. The black rubber stamps that say canceled, that's on one side, and that's on the other side. This shouldn't be printed on both sides. It should be blank on one side and printed on the other side only. We're going to look at this word here, note. And you can see behind that word, let's go back to the other image here, it shows better. We've got some decorative tint behind that word. And this is what it looks like at 20 power. All these speckles, all these colors, that should be a uniform color. It should be line lithography, which we get to next. This is a British military authority note for 1 shilling, and it's in the wrong color. This is another piece which he has made from whole cloth. He's printed this thing from scratch, face and back. He's got the wrong font for the K, the wrong colors. It should be this mauve shade right here. And you can see that the K is different. We're going to look at this word right there, buy, at 20 power. There's his buy. And there's the genuine buy. All line lithography. There's no intaglio, there's no letterpress on this note. The block might be letterpress. I don't remember whether the block is letterpress. But the basic note is all line lithography, just like military payment certificates, British Armed Forces special vouchers, and so forth. Here's a local municipal script from Algeria, 1916. This is on cardboard. It's circulated. It's good for 5 centavos, or 5 centimes. Sorry, wrong language here. With a cock on the back. And we're going to be looking at this area right up here at 20 power. See all these dots out here? This should be uniform paper color. The card should be one shade, not printed, but manufactured in a shade of gray-green. And then printed on top of that, the image. But instead, what we have here is the image and the color for the card itself all merged together from one printing process, all inkjet. And then where he's mutilated the edges to make it look well circulated, the dots all suddenly stop. Commissariat Ville de Tunis, Tunisia, Tunis, Special Commissariat. This is all inkjet. I don't have this at 20 power, but take my word for it, it's all inkjet. Here we have an unknown stamp. It's a Città de Fiume. Nobody's ever seen this Fiume stamp before. It's not the normal stamp for a Fiume revalidation. And Commando, no one's ever heard of Commando either. That's also inkjet. This is something he invented. This is from a little bit of Hungary, which was sliced off of Yugoslavia after World War II. And they printed, well, the note is pre-war, but they printed these stamps and applied the stamps to revalidate it at 1,000 dinara for the use in Hungary. There's the double cross, and reminds you of the cross of Lorraine, but the Hungarians also use that cross. It's Saint somebody's cross. I can't remember what saint it is. That's used on a lot of Hungarian stamps. Well, this is a multi-$100 note, and I kept he'd sold 7 or 8 of them, and I kept saying, nope, too much money for me for something which I was sure was going to be bad, because I was sure that this stamp was fabricated. And finally got one down to just over $100, and I bought that one. And sure enough, the stamp is exactly what I expected. We're going to look right here at the across the bottom here and across the bottom here. There's the letterpress on the original print. And here's all of his inkjet for the stamp. This is another stamp which he's made from whole cloth, just like that Syrian stamp that we saw, where he was printing both face and back. Well, in this case, he only needed to print the face. And he's got his printer pretty well trained to not fill up this space out in the edges here. It's a little bit out of register on the ends, but it's not putting dots all the way out to the edges of the perforations. Some of us, other pieces, or somebody else's pieces, I can't pin the Egyptian one on him. The counterfeit dots go all the way out to the edges of the paper. There was a festival in Poland in 1986 in Warsaw, celebrating faleristics, which is militaria, military decorations and medals, and numismatics. And there were 5 or 7 different varieties of overprints on obsolete Polish notes advertising this show. With different organizations that were going to be meeting there, their logos, et cetera, and he must have come across a suitcase full of remainders of these things. I think he must have sold at least 50 of the original overprinted notes from the 1986 event until he ran out of them, and he started printing his own using inkjet. Well, you can see that the quality is considerably lower than the quality of the original. This is his inkjet copy, and here's the letterpress original. This was on this stamp here. It was originally a rubber stamp of an anti-Nazi partisan group in Poland. They created several of these stamps celebrating various campaigns they were waging against the Nazis. This should be a rubber stamp. What do we got here? Stair-stepping. I didn't mention when we saw the stair-stepping on the Syrian stamp, but that's a symptom of an inkjet printer, a digital printer that doesn't cope well with diagonals or curved lines. So all the curves up here in the eagle and the curves down here in the text and the diagonal line here in the V for victory are all stair-stepped. You don't even need 20 power to see those. You just need to look carefully. There's just the end with the overprint by itself. Isla de Malvinas, the Falkland Islands. This is a Falkland Islands note. When the Argentines invaded Falkland Islands, they did not bring in any notes with them. There were no known emergency notes from the Falkland Islands campaign, but he decided he was going to build some. So he took low-grade Falkland notes and put inkjet, Isla de Malvinas. This is just plain old magic marker, felt tip pen, and you can see where every place he put the pen down before he drew the line, it left a blob. Over here, I've got no idea what he was doing with this. He took some kind of a stamp and inked it up and just smeared it all around to obliterate the Queen's face. Next version looked like this. It's all inkjet, here, here, and here. And even the cloud over here, over the Queen's head, is also inkjet. when you get down to 20 power, which we're not going to be able to get to here. I mean, you won't be able to see the individual dots, but they're all in there. But all of these, I think he's done 3 or 4 of these. They're all fantasies. French Somalia, Djibouti. If you got the right books, you know that this alphabet was in fact overprinted by FC, Français Combattantes, the fighting French. This is the genuine overprint on this note. This is a fairly scarce note as a genuine piece. I was able to buy this for 16 pounds because A, it's a pretty ugly short snorter, and B, nobody wants to spend any money with this guy for overprints anymore because he's ruined the market in these things. He must have sold 20 of these notes. Well, I was able to steal this one because I knew that the 64 up into the 70s, those were the blocks that were overprinted. So this is the second one I've showed you that was actually a genuine piece that I was able to score from knowing something about the material. One was the Syrian stamp, and the other one was this getting the block right. So here's the genuine overprint in letterpress, and there's his inkjet overprint, purporting to be the same piece. Propaganda note on the back of a French or a Japanese 10 yen note. Well, if you look up here at the text, what do we get here? All kinds of stair stepping. Can't cope with those diagonal lines. This is all inkjet. In the first place, it's not supposed to be on a real note. This is a propaganda message that the Americans printed and dropped on the Japanese on a 10 yen replica. Here's our version of the same overprint. He left off the control number here, 2009. He erased that from his piece. You don't see that up here in the corner. But this is what the other side is supposed to look like. It's a replica of a 10 yen note. It's not a real 10 yen note, and it had no back. The note should have been printed on a blank back. Here's another one. I've never seen this particular propaganda leaflet. That's probably Ninomiya Sontoku, a Japanese agronomist from the 19th century, and a very revered fellow in Japan. This text looks good. It's got all the little furigana next to it for the Japanese soldiers who were illiterate in the kanji, but they could read the kana. So you read that to get the sound, and in the context, you know what the word is. So he found this propaganda leaflet someplace, copied it, and printed it on the back of a 10 yen note. Not the way we would have done it. And it's inkjet. There's another propaganda piece on the back of a 100 yen note. Another fantasy. Here's yet another one. Now, this has got a control number, but it's not one of the 4 that we put on the backs of banknotes. We printed this note, but it was again on plain paper with some other message on the other side. It wasn't printed on a genuine banknote to be dropped as propaganda. Here's yet another one. This simulates this note here. This is the note that we dropped on the Burmese, telling them to resist the Japanese and look forward to the days when the British would return. I don't know how eagerly they were looking forward to the British coming back, but at least it was an anti-Japanese propaganda piece. He's taken that same text and printed it on the back of a genuine piece of gem instead of printing it on the back of a plain piece with the replica of the gem on the other side. There should be another one of these. No, I guess I'm just showing you one. He's done this both ways. He's done it with the Roman text and also with the Burmese text. Now, Stanislav Strauss was talking about fake errors. Well, here's a fake error. There's nothing wrong with the face of this note, but he's taken all the ink off the back, mostly. Remember, Stani talked about the substrate. In this substrate is an imitation watermark. You can see a head, the outline of a head here. That didn't get removed. Whatever solvent he was using to remove the ink from the back of the note didn't get all the substrate. It also didn't get all the color off of that substrate. This pink all up in here is leftover. It should have been removed by his solvent, but it wasn't because it's gotten itself chemically combined with the white substrate. This is what the UV signature of the note looks like on the face. We have two serial numbers, the big deuce for the counter and the red seal. On the back, there's UV ink here and here on the original note, on the genuine note, and it did not get removed by his solvent. So under UV, you can see that this is not a note that had no back printing. And you can also see the substrate even better here. You can see the outline of the substrate. Here's the same thing with the Brunei piece. He's taken all the ink off the back of this Brunei note, left everything on the face. And here's another one from Singapore. This is a $50 Singapore note. All you have left is the face, and whatever was on this over here, there was some sort of an OVI strip over here. He's managed to strip that all the way too. And even if the note were in fact an error, that would still be there because that's on there before the note gets printed. It's put on there by the manufacturer before the note goes to press. French Indochina in the days before the French left, with a Viet Cong rubber stamp on the back. Well, this is an image of a genuine Viet Cong rubber stamp, but this one happens to all be inkjet. See all the black speckles? And here's a Laotian stamp. Treasurer of Laos, payable in Vientiane. Also all inkjet. This was copied from Howard Daniels' book on Lao notes, Laotian notes. Ukraine. This is a 10 ruble coupon for something. I don't know what the function of this was. It was printed on the back of one of the Tsarist 1 ruble notes in letterpress. He sold this piece. I didn't buy it because I already had one from a Ukrainian correspondent. Actually, I got mine from a Hungarian correspondent. But then, after he sold the one, he'd already lifted the image and he printed them again in inkjet. And he sold several of the inkjet versions. He only ever sold the one genuine, the one original. And then you see all these parallel white lines here. Again, that's where the wet ink went across a roller coming out of the printer and got damaged as it came out. This is supposed to be a color trial of an Egyptian note. It's red on one side. He doesn't show you the other side. Turns out the other side is exactly the same design in violet. But it's not a color trial. It's 4-color process lithography. That's not a printing technology that's used by security printers. It was very, very rare that you find four-color process being used, and certainly not by the guys who were working for the Egyptian government. So I didn't keep the one I got of this. It was too far over the edge for me. I exercised my eBay privilege to return it as not being as described. He never gets any negative feedback because he always satisfies the customer. He'll make an instant refund if you have any complaint whatsoever. I give him low grades for his descriptions. I give him 1 star when he sends out something that isn't as described. But I continue to give him the positive feedback, because if I give him negative feedback, he cuts me off. He's done that to me 2 or 3 times under his different names. Doesn't allow me to do any more bidding on his site. I want to be able to see what he's creating. Here's a fake error. It's the wrong shade of green. That green doesn't match any green on the note, but he put that smear of ink on there and sold it as an error note. Sold this one in March of 2019 for 51 pounds. We got returned to him. He sold it again in November of 2019 for only 32 pounds. He's sold 4 or 5 of these fake errors. Each one has a different pattern of the green. Here's his work on the polymer 20. Now watch the hairline up here, the line between the head and the tiara. That's the second one. Completely different pattern up here. That's the third one, somewhat different. It's close to the first one, but the treatment over here is different. More of the 20 has been removed. If we go back to the first one, you can see there's a lot more left here. Here's 3 different notes. He sold these for 88 pounds, 140 pounds, and 57 pounds. This one was up last week. It closed last Sunday, and it didn't close. It was taken down. It was one that I reported, and it's the first non-Nazi piece I've ever reported that's been taken down off the site. Now, I don't know whether he took it down or whether eBay took it down. He got in trouble before for selling actual counterfeits of British notes. He was off the air for about 10 or 11 months, about 5 years ago, when he got caught selling a British counterfeit as a counterfeit. He described it as a counterfeit. And the next week after he sold that piece, he ran 1 more week's worth of stuff, and didn't come back for the longest time, almost a year. I think he was feeling some heat from the law at that point. He puts up about 100 to 115 lots a week, and only 7 or 8, the most it's ever been has been 19, are these spurious pieces. Everything else is good stuff. He gets good notes from wherever his sources are. Now, this piece is obviously a fairground piece from the States on this fake parchment paper with black signatures instead of pen signatures, and he sold that. Now, we finished looking at the numismatic pieces. Now we're going to look at how he treats specimen markings and counterfeit markings. Here's an Angola note with a lot of red in the center here, and under the right circumstances of light struck or water or who knows what, that red ink can disappear, which makes it essentially an unsaleable note. So he puts a specimen marking across it and sells it, because people, don't realize that it's actually a damaged note. They think it's a specimen. You can see the leftover red ink fragments still visible back there. I don't know what got to it. Here's a remainder of a French community note from 1925, which he's thrown specimen on because he can sell it for more than he sells it as remainder. And there's that maroon color again. He can't seem to get a specimen marking that's not that color. He's also been known to put the specimen marking right here where the serial number should be. We saw this one already. This one is supposed to be a proof note or a printer's trial or something. It's got no serials, it's got no seals, it's been trimmed down tight. He sold this for 20 pounds, got it sent back to him, put specimen markings on it, and sold it for 11 pounds. So he didn't do as well the second time, but at least he got it out the door and didn't get it back. This is another one of his specimen markings on a dog of a note. Half gone over here. This is supposed to be about twice that length over here with a nice big watermark in it. So that's half gone with stains on both ends. Now watch these margins. He sold this piece for 41 pounds. He got it back. He trimmed off all the discoloration down here, trimmed off half of that stain down here, and sold it again for 67 pounds. It's a fake specimen. It's inkjet. There's another one of his fake specimen markings on a low value note. That one he sold for 19 pounds. Now this is an actual circulating counterfeit of the West African states. This is from Ivory Coast. The letter A here indicates Ivory Coast. And it's a very bad counterfeit. You can see on the back here all this misregistration of the colors. So to make it more saleable, he put contrefaçon on it, which is counterfeit in French, but it makes it more attractive to have an overprint on it than to just try to sell it as a circulating bad counterfeit. There's another one, and check this serial number out. It's exactly the same as the number that we had back here. Now, this note I bought, and 2 weeks later, he sold this one with the same number on it. So the counterfeiter who made these didn't even have running numbers. You know, whoever, this is not one of his counterfeits. This is a counterfeit that already existed that he got a couple of pieces of and added markings to them to make them more saleable. Here's an actual counterfeit of a Somali note. I already had this counterfeit in my collection as well. And he added the counterfeit markings in French. In this case, this is the Bahrani note that has the gap in between these two characters, which indicates that it's a counterfeit. Long story behind this, which we don't have time to go into, but he added the rubber stamp here that says counterfeit to make it a little bit more attractive. And he did it again on this one in Arabic. Again, with the gap between the two characters there. This one is a genuine note, badly stained, unsaleable, so he put on it in Turkish, counterfeit, and sold it as a counterfeit note, even though it's a genuine piece. No end of imagination. I don't know who put the false on this one. This is a Fiume. This is I told you I'd show you the regular Fiume marking eventually. This is the more commonly seen, Città di Fiume. And somebody has identified that as a fake rubber stamp and put false here. Now, it is a true rubber stamp. This is not one of his inkjet jobs. I don't know who put false on it. He may have, because hardly anybody wants to buy these anymore because there are so many fakes in the market. So by marking it like this, it looks like it's got some provenance and makes it more saleable. This is one of his counterfeits, Pagavel Am Timur, a Timur note made from a Macau note. Wrong signature, wrong block. 100% inkjet overprint. He sold that note twice, got it back twice, then put falsificao on it and sold it as a counterfeit. Well, it was a counterfeit, in fact. He created the damn thing. There's another one of his. The color's a little better on this one. He only sold this one once, and he got it back. And so then he put the false, I don't know how to pronounce this in Portuguese. I presume the C is like in French. So falsificação.
Right.
Mr. Boling, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but it is 1 o'clock and
Yeah,
it is time for our next presentation. So if you want to wrap it up and.
I'm on my last note.
Okay.
I'm on the last note.
Okay.
This is the Corsica issued during World War II after we liberated Corsica before we went into France. This is a $250 note if it's genuine. This is another one that I looked at using the limited magnification that he allows and no look at the back, and decided this is worth taking a chance for, because this wear here, through the wear line through this image, tells me that that's not inkjet. It wouldn't, if he'd put this on after the circulation occurred, we wouldn't have that wear. It's a very well done overprint. See all the dropouts. The printer barely touched the paper, but down at the bottom of the T, you can see a little bit of evidence of the letterpress. So that gets us back to the first slide. I had two more sections of this talk, which we're not going to get to at all. One was all the fantasies he's created in colored art on watermark windows, and the other is all the same old stuff that he's been making for the past 8 or 9 years. He just keeps cranking out, which I covered 5 years ago when I did this. So stop share. Okay. I'm out. It's yours. Thank you.